Flies are running amok in huge numbers in parts of WA. Even the locals are saying it's getting ridiculous and they're resorting to donning hat nets. Tanya Latty is an entomologist with the University of Sydney and she joins us now. Tanya, welcome. So the flies, running amok in WA. What's going on?
Yeah, so the Australian bush fly is like one of our iconic insects here in Australia. It's a native species and it really likes warm, humid weather. And so when we get conditions where it's quite warm for a while, you start to get this buildup in populations. The other thing they really need is an abundant food source. The larvae feed on manure, so whenever there's lots of livestock, plus warm conditions tends to equal large numbers of flies.
Yeah, and so this season in WA, it's been a pretty big wet season, and it's remaining warmer for longer into the year.
That's exactly it. This is a bit later in the year than we would normally see this big pulse of flies. It tends to happen more spring, summer, but as you said, it's been wetter later in the year and it's been warmer later in the year. So.
And are they're a bigger problem when you've got heaps of cow dung around.
Yeah, because they breed in manure. So manure is like a great buffet of food for their babies. And so when you get lots of manure on a landscape, for example, in farming regions, then you're going to get lots of bush flies.
Yeah, and so what role have dung beetles played in keeping control of fly numbers over the years?
Yeah, so it's a great story of using an insect to help deal with another insect problem. So historically, bush flies would have been feeding mostly on the manure of things like marsupials, which is much smaller and drier than what we see from, say, cows or sheep or livestock. And so when Europeans brought these huge mammals in, it created this surge in fly numbers because suddenly there was so much more food on the landscape. And our native dung beetles were not able to bury that poop because they were used to kind of drier, smaller manure. So in the 60s, CSIRO imported several species of dung beetle who are very good at being able to bury that dung before the bush flies can breed on it, thus taking it off the landscape and causing our fly numbers to go back to a more reasonable number most of the time.
But they haven't been doing a good job lately.
Yeah, they can't always keep up. So when you get the perfect conditions for flies, their populations will go up, but it won't be forever.
Yeah, and so as you say, they're a native species, and we're seeing some extraordinary pics here of just how thick the fly. Look at them on that hat there. Considering they're a native species, despite the fact that it's really annoying for people, is it actually a good sign in terms of the health of the environment that there are heaps about or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but bush flies in general are really important for the functioning of an ecosystem. I know it sounds gross, but breeding on manure, they're nature's cleanup crew. They're taking that manure and turning it into fly bodies and larva bodies, which are high in protein and fat, and then provide food for other animals. So they're really helping those nutrients flow through that ecosystem. So we need them.
So we should be embracing the flies.
We should. They're doing a dirty job, but someone has to do it, and they're doing it well.
And so how long is this likely to last? What's needed?
We need some cooler weather. So the bush flies breed well when it's warm, but as it goes below around 15 degrees, they tend to slow down and will eventually die off when it gets colder. So again, it just depends on what the weather decides to do.
Yeah. Now, you're originally Canadian and you are so driven by your love for insects that you came here to live in Australia. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, Australia has so many amazing native insects. We have heaps of insects. They're big and they're largely unknown. So we actually know very little about the ecology of most of our native insects. I mean, insects make up about 75% of animal species. So I always say if you like animals, you have to like insects.
And so as a kid, you were always walking around and getting the insects and collecting them?
Yeah, I'd catch things for my parents and say, oh, look at this cool thing I found. And I've always been this person. It's just that now I get paid to do it, which is astonishing for me.
And Australia is so much better at it than Canada, huh?
It is. In Canada, once it gets cold, all the insects die. So there's a very sad season for me when there are no insects about. But here, all year round.
Year round. Okay, Tanya, really lovely to have a chat to you.
Thanks
for coming in.
Thanks.